So shall we start?
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8, 9, 10. I think we shall start.
Yeah. Okay, so. Bismillah. Well, good afternoon, everyone. First, I would really like to thank you for accepting this and making this event possible, because, of course, without your participation and interest, would not be. What I want to say that today, I first want to check if you can all hear me. If you can't, there is an icon which says join audio. It is on the bottom, on the left, you find it. So you will be possible. Concerning the microphones, I have the options to mute everyone, so I can only talk, or we give the opposite possibility later for you to talk, because this this online conference is not about me lecturing or giving you any kind of lessons. It's about you to give you the possibility to discuss the problem or any kind of problem you have, especially now amid this kind of pandemic. And we try to see what kind of solutions, especially in the methodology section, and how can you survive with this and how can you finish your dissertation. This is the idea about making these conferences. So without further ado, I would like to give you the opportunity now to talk, allow you the microphone. So if you want to talk, you can send private message to me or to Ilyas or to Miss Amina Madour. She's also an organizer here. Send her a private message, tell her that I want to talk, and we can allow the microphone to be unmuted. So everyone is welcome to talk, anyone. Are we going to talk? Maybe we start with you, Mr. Ilyas.
We start with what?
We start with you, with the co-host.
Okay.
Yeah, so if the others just know how it's going to work.
So I think this meeting is about the dissertation, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
The difficulties that we are facing in the in our dissertations and
Yep.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, still you don't have any questions. Others, do you have any
I don't
questions?
have any questions.
Good, good. Means you are about to finish, or you have already finished.
No, I finished. I was having a long trip. That's why I'm a bit tired.
Nice, nice, nice. So others. What about you, Ms. Mukhtari? My best students.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Thank you for the compliment, by the way.
You are welcome.
Well, I just started with the practical part, second chapter, and I'm a little bit lost because I forgot how to do that. I just wrote till now the introduction, and I'm just confused about what to do next and so on. Can you just explain in general what to do?
Okay, so let me try to say what I always say concerning the methodological section. We have what I wanted to say. I always want to say concerning the methodological section that you have now, for example, you have a problem. You have like new circumstances that has changed everything. So, for example, if you previously agreed with your supervisor concerning a fixed methodology, and now all of a sudden you have this situation which you cannot go out. For example, you cannot go and carry out your research outside, means that you are really fixed in terms of options on how to do it, data gathering tools. So we don't have experiment anymore. You don't have, for example, observation and in-site observation. You don't have that. So pretty much you are only limited to the two online questionnaires, observation, and anything that is going to use technology and remote, so distant kind of technology to get access to the place you want to investigate. Since we have this problem, now you have to adjust your methodology from the ground. Your question means that you will have first now to reevaluate research questions. For example, you have research questions that deal with observation, you need to change that. If you have questions that deal with quantitative analysis, for example, of an experiment, of course you need to omit that. So you will have to adjust research questions. You have just research questions. Aligned with that, you will have to also data gathering tools, and of course on how to analyze the whole research. Mostly we were, for example, most students were counting on the idea of using quantitative analysis. But with this case, you will have only the option to go with qualitative. And this is a problem too. So you have to put this in mind. Now, concerning what to do, the obvious, you have always the same titles and subtitles, the same procedures. You start always with an introduction. You go to the approaches, you talk about what kind of approaches you are going to use. Then you talk about data gathering tools. What are the tools that you are going to use? Then you move to sample. You talk about the sample. You talk about the sampling, and you go directly to the analysis procedure. For example, in the case, for example, if you are using online questionnaire, if you are using Google Form, for example, everything is easy there. Just you will ask students or teachers to go and answer, and the answers, in fact, they are going to be presented for you in plain sight. So you will have just the copy paste all the results. This is the good thing about using technology. So it's pretty much the same, but you have to really alter everything concerning your research design. This is concerning your question, Ms. Mukhtari. Others, if you have like very specific question, like very specific problem, for example, you can present it.
Sure. Considering use of questionnaire, what kind of approach we apply on it?
What do you mean by approach?
I mean, like quantitative or qualitative, considering the questionnaire.
The questionnaire, if you're just asking about question, some try to look at it from a quantitative point of view, but the problem, a questionnaire is always qualitative. It's always, we are asking for opinions. So it's always, yes, so it's most of the time it is qualitative, not quantitative. Unless there is some kind of counting, sometimes you want to count something through questionnaire, but even with that, the use of questionnaire itself is related with qualitative approach.
Okay, thank you so much. So I write that I apply the qualitative approach, not the quantitative, not both.
Yeah, it's the qualitative, because you will need opinions and things like that. Then you need interpretation, which are also qualitative in nature.
Okay, but mostly qualitative.
Yeah, it is the case.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome. Yes, others. We have like so many students, but I see that most of them are quiet.
Yes, they are quiet indeed. Concerning those who joined using their the name the name of their phone, you may want to change to your real name, please. Thank you.
Yes, any students, any problems, try to ask, don't be shy. This is an opportunity for you just to ask any questions you have in mind. Yeah, still waiting. Okay. I see a lot of my students, but they are... Hello? Okay, so let me try if in the case that... Hello? Hello?
I guess Miss Hiba wants to talk.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe her microphone is not working.
Yeah, exactly.
Miss Darahiba?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Thank you. How are you, sir? Hope you are doing well.
I am so good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What about you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. You know, the quarantine stuff.
Alhamdulillah. So, how is it going with your work?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine with my work, but I have just one question about when we comparing between pre-test and post-test. They said that we should use the SPSS.
You should. No, there is nothing called you should. Then?
And when we, to be honest, I couldn't work with it because it is very difficult first. And second thing, when they said for validity of your results, you have to work with the t-test, I guess.
Okay.
And I found some problems with some terms like mean, CD deviation, I guess, and a lot of terms.
Okay.
And I sent a message to you, and of course you couldn't reply because we have many circumstances.
Oh, really? Okay. So sorry. I already have like so many students I supervise that sometimes the problem I really get distracted by that. Now, what I want to say concerning first the use of application like the SPSS. Let me assure you that it's not obligatory that you have to use SPSS because it's advanced first. I can hear my echo, which is a problem. Wait. Miss Delahiba, can you, wait, good. I just will mute the microphone, then I will allow, because I can hear my echo, which is a problem. Now listen, first, SPSS is not that important. There is nothing called you have to use SPSS. For master dissertation, maybe with the numbers you will have, I don't know what kind of data you are working with, but everything you can do with SPSS, you can do with, for example, Microsoft Excel. So like you will have no problem with that. So this is the first thing. SPSS can help you, yes, for example, analyze data quickly. Sometimes this gives you more options to deal with data, correlation, how to understand data, for example. In this regard, SPSS can be better. But SPSS is just an application that organizes numbers, etc. So it's nothing specific about that. Now, concerning Excel, Excel is so easy. For example, I don't know, for example, what kind of application are you using? What kind of application are you using? Miss Dalahiba, what kind of application are you using?
Well, I use Microsoft Excel. So,
good. Yeah, it's good.
So I didn't work with the SPSS because I found it difficult. And of some terms, actually, I watched many videos, tutorials about how to use it. But when I tried to apply this stuff, I couldn't understand some terms like mean, C deviation, GT, and a lot of stuff. So I stopped. I just start the way.
Okay, let me talk concerning minutes. Concerning the mean, we have the mean. Usually we talk the mean, the median, the mode, and usually talk about the standard. We talked about the standard deviation. Yeah. Usually when you have a set of numbers, the first thing, what's the first thing we look at when it comes to numbers? Miss Dada, or anyone who can participate. When we talk about numbers, or when you have a group of numbers, what's the first thing we can look at?
Sir, I didn't quite understand. Please repeat.
When you are working an experiment with an experiment, usually you will have numbers.
Yes.
You will have like collection of numbers. Now, what's the first thing? For example, if I want to check, for example, result of 10 students, what is the first thing I'm going to look or going to perceive with these numbers? What's the first thing?
Gender,
Maybe.
Yes?
Gender.
Yes, Mukhtari?
The gender.
Gender, no, just numbers. Numbers that don't tell you nothing.
The average, the upper and the lower ones.
Okay, so as a teacher, for example, the first thing I'm going to look at, for example, who took the best mark?
Yes, the upper and the lower ones.
Good. So usually we look for this, whereas usually these are called the extreme, usually they have a name. So for example, you start with, I forgot the name, what to call them. For example, you start with the maximum value and the minimum value. Good. So this is the first thing you need to report in any numbers. Then the second thing you will look for the average, because in most of the time, when we talk about marks in our schools, we talk about the average. Yes or no? The average is usually what's called in statistics, it is the mean. It is the mean. Understood?
Yeah.
Good. This is the mean. So you have the mean. This is what you are looking for usually. There is another thing called the mode. It's called the mode. What is the mode? It's usually the most frequent number. For example, I didn't get you, Miss Mother. Stratified. Can you please explain it to me? Wait, I have Miss Amina Madu. She has an idea.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, because I forgot some IDs, I already worked with them last year. So I guess stratified is something like it's like the opposite of systematic. I guess we have like so many ways, like random and systematic and stratified. I guess this stratified deals with the highest mark and the lowest mark, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, usually we use the word stratified, means that you have to organize them. You have to organize them. Usually when it comes to the higher value and the lower value, there is one term we use called the range. It's called the range. In the range, you have to know what is the higher value and what's the lowest value. It's the maximum and what is the minimum. So you need these two because you need them to talk about it. Then you need the mean, which is the average. You need the average. Then, but sometimes the problem with the average is it's not going to tell you everything. Let's say, for example, Miss Dalahiba, if you can hear me well, if you have, for example, students, you have 10 students, all these 10 students, they take 10. So every one of them took 10. So what is the average in this case? What's the average? Is going to be 10 in this case. So like everyone took the same mark. But what if sometimes we talk about the average, but we have like someone taking 20 and someone taking 0? What do you think the average is going to be? The average also is going to be 10, but here the picture has changed. Do you get me, Miss Dalahiba?
Yes, sir.
Good. This is the idea that I really want to stress here when it comes to statistics. The idea that the mean itself does not tell you everything. It tells you, yes, What is the average mark, for example? Sometimes we need to go with the idea of the standard deviation. The standard deviation. The standard deviation, it's going to tell you another thing. For example, the example that all students in, I have a class, all students took 10. The average is going to be 10. But imagine with me, if 15 students took 0, and 15 students took 20. Did you get this?
Yes, sir.
So the average here is also going to be 10. But we can't say that it is the same case, because in this case we had all students taking 10, and here we have half of them took the full mark, and the other half took 0. Now, in this case, we need what we call this. Yes, sir?
No, nothing. Just continue, sir.
So in this case, we need to check for the standard deviation. Standard deviation is what? Let me simplify it for you. It's going to calculate the variability between all the values. For example, if I have 10 students, everyone taking 10, 10, 10, 10, you will see a flat line, means that standard deviation is 0. The standard deviation is going to be 0. But every time there is like a chain, there is discrepancies between the values, that the standard deviation is going to be different. So in statistics, usually say it's much better to find a low value when it comes to standard deviation. It's much better. And when you want to describe your result, use the word consistency. Use the word consistency. Means that, for example, if you have an approach, we have a method, and you want to teach students or an experiment, then in this approach you find like similar results. This is better. Means that your work, your theory has yielded consistent results. Different than, for example, I teach with a method, then half the students they take 0, and half of the students they take like they take 0, and others they take the full mark. This is the idea of consistency. So in statistics, you need to talk about, okay, the maximum, minimum, easy. Second thing, you talk about the average, but again, you talk about the standard deviation. And Miss Della, I have posted, I think 1 month ago, I posted a video on these things in the official group. Have you checked it?
Yes, and actually I tried to use your method. So I literally used your method.
Yeah, because it's easy. It's going to spare you from the complexities of SPSS, because that is really complicated.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Any other question, Mr.?
No, thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Yes, others, anyone want to join in? By the way, you can use any language. You can use Arabic, French, any language you know. The idea that you have to talk, you have to share your problem. I don't have any, I think you are all my students, so you know that I don't have any problem with that.
Hello.
No, hi.
Hello, sir. Hello, everyone.
We have.
And
I can't hear you well. I can't hear you well. Mrs. Yazir? I can't hear you. It's
yes.
It's breaking.
Can you hear me now?
It's breaking a bit, but we try to.
All right. So I hope you're well and healthy. For me, I have a problem studying my sample size. I don't know how many participants is enough to make a generalization.
You don't know how many participants. You don't know how many participants are enough for what?
Yeah.
For what? For what?
Sample size.
I didn't hear this word exactly. How many participants for what?
For a questionnaire.
For a questionnaire, good. So you don't know how many participants.
Yeah.
Good.
I will not decide my sample size and don't know how.
It's breaking like hell. I think you
Are
have.
you hearing?
Yeah, I think you have a connection problem that's really preventing you from.
Well, I'm really sorry.
No, try to repeat again. So I heard the question that how many you don't know how many participants are enough for a questionnaire. This is question one, and.
All right, I'll try to say it again. I'll say it again. Yeah, it's one question. It's only one question.
Okay, if you can't, you can type. By the way, if there's. Okay, so we go to the question of how many participants. Yes, I guess I also heard this question today, is how many participants we need. Now, concerning the word participants, you have to talk, you have to first think about what is the, what's the global population. For example, we say, I want to conduct a research to ask master 2 students in the university, in our university. In our university, I think we have 250 students. Now in 250 students, and you want to conduct a research or investigation with them. If you come and tell me I have only 10 students from 250, I would tell you, no, that will be not enough because it's really, really far. 10 students really do not represent the whole 250. So this is why always think about the population. If I have 250 and I work with, for example, 30, 50, that would be good. That would be really good. 30, we can accept this. Of course, this is sometimes goes to your supervisor if he's going to accept it or not. This is concerning participant, but sometimes there is a difference also. Sometimes we have like a questionnaire, but in this questionnaire, it's like a case study. For example, I'm working with 10 students all the time, just these 10 students, and I'm working with them as a case study. In this case, no, 10 is going to be, we need just those students. It's not like, for example, I want to ask questionnaire, I want to ask students about their opinion on a matter, then I send questionnaire. It's usually, the more I have, it's the better. But you have to be aware that sometimes the response rate of questionnaires, it's not usually as we expect. For example, you will send the questionnaire. I remember last year, I sent a questionnaire to a group in Facebook. The group in Facebook, I think it had like 3,000 participants. And the result I got, I think 12 responses, 12. I mean, imagine you have a group of 3,000 to only find 12 or 13, I don't remember the exact number of responses. In this case, we can say that this is what I have, especially, for example, now when we have this coronavirus problem. If the jury is going to ask you, said, you don't have enough number, the participants are not sufficient, you can simply say, this is what I have. I sent the questionnaire to a group, for example, in our group of university, I think it's around 600 participants, I think, or more, I think, and you get only, for example, 12 or 13. You can't do anything concerning this. Understood?
Sure.
Yeah.
About this question in particular, in my case study is about all the department of English, both English students and teachers.
Okay.
But when I submitted the questionnaire, I get like only 36 students and 34 students and 6 teachers. So is this gonna be enough? The teachers are just a bit.
When did you post it? When did you post it first?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, but you have at least to give it.
What if it didn't get a bigger number?
No, you try. I mean, first, since you post it on Facebook, try to make the post always alive. For example, you post it today, you give them like 10 days and try to send.
I posted and I sent it in the private, like in message private. I was like bothering them everywhere.
Yes, I know you. You are the type of brothers all the time.
You know me. So what if I didn't get the number that I want? What if it stayed like this?
No, it's not going to stay, but at the end, you will have to work with what you have. I have 36, I will work with this. It's going to give me an idea, a general idea. I'm not going to generalize it. I'm going to say, this is what I have because of the situation, and I can't change it. I don't have anything. I can't go to their houses and ask, okay, and knock on doors. Can you answer this? Because you can't. We are in confinement, everything. So this is what you have. And they will understand. Because you have to remember, by the way, this is the difference between a master dissertation. This is a master dissertation. This is the master dissertation. Master dissertation, the focus most of the time is not in the result itself. It's usually the methodology. I mean, any jury is not looking, is going to look deeply into the result. What we going to scrutinize is, how did you do it? This is the question we are going to ask. How did you do it?
This is a problem, sir. During these circumstances, do you think just only the questionnaire would be enough? What if they say, why you didn't choose another method or something?
No, they can't say it because, as I told you, and I remind you again, you need also, when you write concerning the methodology, and this is to all participants, by the way, and you have to take note concerning this, it is better to write your original methodology. Write it. Tell the jury, tell the reader that when I wanted to conduct my research, this was my original plan. This is what I wanted to do. But
okay, sir, where do we write this part? Where do we?
Either you are clever and you insert it in the methodology design. For example, said I want to investigate this, and the original plan was to go with search methodology.
Okay.
However, Jane, or you can leave it to the limitation of the study, and you put a complaint that, okay, this is what I want to do, and the results are not satisfactory. My work is not really satisfying, is not enough, because my original plan was better, and this is what I was supposed to do. This is, I think, what everyone should say.
Okay, considering the ethical parts, where do we write this?
Concerning ethical, it's called ethical consideration. Usually,
yes.
either you put this section in the methodology design, you put it there, you put the ethical consideration, or sometimes you can leave it to the end. If you leave it to the end, you can tell us everything, how you did, how are you going to deal with the data you have. But usually it's right before the analysis of data. You talk about, because it's part of the methodology, it's consideration. You consider that before the analysis. This is how I got my result. If I have, for example, data that are really sensitive, I said, this is what I'm going to do with my data. Then you just tell us how you are going. It's usually generic. This is the good thing about it. Sometimes you just use it over and over, but it's good to see it's there. For example, me, when I read any master dissertation or in a doctoral dissertation, finding an ethical consideration section means that this student really knows what's doing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We have, I have a question here for someone has sent me a private message. He said, if I'm using both questionnaire, if I'm using both questionnaire and an interview, but I'm using more questionnaire, what I'm approaching using general, like, do I mention both of them? Okay, wait. Okay, now concerning if you say you are using an interview and you are using a questionnaire, well, both of them are qualitative. If you are still listening, this, I don't know, where we back his phone. If you are using questionnaire and interview, both they are qualitative. They are, so you don't have any quantitative approach, because what is quantitative approach? Usually you have set of numbers and you are going to tell us these numbers said that, and you don't interpret anything. For example, if I have 10 students and all these students take 10, I'm going to report it that my students took 10, full stop. You don't need to interpret anything. This is quantitative. But when you have qualitative, there is a room for interpretation. Both interview and questionnaire, usually you have qualitative. Sometimes you find some scholars talking about questionnaire as if it is quantitative. For example, you ask certain students about, for example, I don't know, maybe something they like, and you present it as number. You find 10 students said this and 10 students said that. Yes, here we have numbers, but it's the same thing. It's still qualitative. I mean, nothing is going to change. I mean, the number is maybe just concerning an opinion or something. If it is a fact, it's not going to change, and that will be called quantitative. That's we have, okay. I'm also using rating scale. Well, the same thing concerning scale, because the scale, you put the scale, you put values and everything. Means how you interpret these values, it's all up to you. It's not per se up to you. You have, for example, criteria to discuss this. So means that it is also qualitative in nature. This is the answer to your question. I hope you did get me. Yes, anyone else wants to talk? Yes, Khardin. I need a file. What kind of file you need? If you try to use your voice, your audio, if you can.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Mr. Boukhba?
I am so good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, classmates. Monsieur Boukhba, راني على بالي اني روطار بزاف بزاف.
No problem.
كاين واحد الفايل فيه الاوتلاين والستراكتور تاع dissertations.
اوكي.
حوست عليه ما لقيتوش. حوست عليه
فايل فيه الاوتلاين تاع الديسرتيشن.
الاوتلاين ستراكتورز شغل ستيبس اللي لازم ديرهم، الحاجه اللي تجي الاولى والحاجه اللي تجي الدوزيام، الحاجه اللي تروازيام. حوست في الانترنت اللي لقيتها توجور يجوا صوالح ديفيرونت على
اللي عندنا.
الحاجه اللي نلقاها تجي ديفيرونت على الحاجه اللي عندنا حنايا.
اوكي.
Do you have such file?
Let me tell you, simplify things. If you have a problem with this, why don't you just go find any master dissertation of last year or from university and you take it and use it as a template? And this will be good for you. I mean, I don't think there is a file to do this.
Good idea.
Man, you don't have any options. This is what you should do.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, thank you.
You are so welcome. So welcome.
Nice gesture.
Yes, someone else?
Yes, me too.
Nah, nice to meet you. I don't know who's talking with this.
My name is Rafi Iman. I am also your student.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Sir, actually, I need help. I'm kind of late. So,
okay.
Concerning the review of literature,
okay.
we divide it into two sections. The first section about the first variable and the second about the second, or just we talk about the first, then we move to the second without any deviation or introduction to the first and the second. This is the first question, and the second concerning the methodology. Can we count only about? I'm sorry. Can we use only one method like questionnaire? Can we study something with you using only questionnaire? Is it acceptable?
Okay. Let's start with the first question concerning the use of the two sections in the theoretical part. Well, I assure you that most of my students, for example, I supervise, they have divided the first chapter into two sections. And because it's a very good practice, especially if we have two variables. And most of the time we have like more than two variables. For example, if we want to study, I don't know, for example, how to enhance writing using, for example, dictation, for example. I have two things. Use of, for example, reading to something else. So we always correlate between two variables. That's why it's good if you can split them. Sometimes we split not just because of variables. Sometimes we talk, and this is usually what I like to my preferences. When you want to talk about purely theoretical, we put one section. Then sometimes you need theory, but related to situation we have, like it's related to the background of your research. For example, I want to talk about the use of communicative approaches in Algeria. The first section, I will talk only about approaches, methods, and etc. Then in the second section, I will focus on the situation in Algeria.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. So my topic is the effect of messaging on on students' writing skills. The case of our university first year.
So you have you have texting or messaging, and you have
exactly, and I have writing skills. So I started by writing skills and all what deals with it. Then I'm going to move to messaging. So should I divide it, right? For example, section B and start talking about messaging directly?
I think.
Or just without saying section B?
No, I think it's better if you divide it, because first you have two variables, two distinct variables. You have writing as language skills. This is another thing. You'll talk about writing, how we evaluate writing, the enhancement of writing, how writing is taught through different approaches. Then in the other section, you talk only about technologies that use them, because when you talk about texting, usually you will have to talk about technology. I mean, what are the technologies used in texting? What is texting? What does characterize the texting language? What's the difference between texting language and a normal language? This is, I think you should really make another section. It would be good. But again, you always need to go to the supervisor always has the saying on these things. Always go back. When it comes to structure, decisions like this, you have to ask the supervisor about his or her opinion. Always bear this in mind.
Okay, thank you very much. What about methodology?
Yeah, we talked about methodology. You said, remind me of the question again.
Is it okay to use only questionnaire in studying a case?
Okay. In normal circumstances, I would say no. But this situation is really unprecedented, and we have nothing to say, and we can't control it. You can't go out. You can't do an experiment. So I think if you stick with the questionnaire, and you have to defend yourself the day of your presentation, say, this is what I could do. I don't have anything. But since it is a questionnaire, try now to really make a very good questionnaire. Try to distribute it to like large group of people. This is what I want you to do now.
Because from my opinion, I tried questionnaire. I already have a questionnaire. But for me, even if I study with a questionnaire, it is not enough, because normally this is an experiment. Normally I I ask them to write about something and I correct it. So for me, I think it is not enough, but I don't have another choice. That's why I ask it, if it is enough or not.
No, it will be enough. You have to know, no, you don't have choices. I don't see any other solutions. This is what you do have, and this is what you should work with. But you at least make it still good and defend yourself. This is what you're supposed to do.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
You are so welcome. Yeah, we have any other one? Others? Okay. Well, again, let me try to, we have how observation checklist should be analyzed, any good tutorial references. Now, concerning Miss Zero, concerning the checklist, well, you have to be careful. If you are going to do an observation, for example, let's say, for example, I think some student asked me about, is going to do an observation for this meeting. This meeting, someone is going to sit there and just observe how things are going to be. So this is observation. But when you want to observe, you should have like what do you call the checklist, the grid. Means that you know exactly what are you looking for. For example, if I want to focus on, for example, on communication, you said how this teacher is going to organize this meeting. You check, for example, he is going to talk in fluent English, one. This teacher is going to allow participants to talk. This is two. This teacher is going to allow, for example, side debate, for example, allow two students to talk to each other, for example. This is what you are looking for. And you checklist, you're just only going to check. This is better than just going to an observation and you sit and you just observe everything. Because in observation, either, for example, I have, for example, because this session is recorded, if I'm recording this and later I want to analyze everything is going to be said. For example, I go back and analyze it. Maybe this is better. But if you don't have, and usually we don't have this option, a teacher is going to ask you, for example, invite you to his or her classroom, tell you, yes, you can observe. Most teachers, they won't allow you to record. So in this case, you are down to a checklist. Just check. For example, do students talk with each other? Check. Do we have a teacher that's allowed students to talk more? Check. Does, for example, one of my students use the topic of sense of humor? Does it, for example, teacher use jokes, etc.? Check. This is the idea of checklist. And you don't find any tutorial, believe me. The idea is just, what are you looking for? You have to ask yourself, Ms. Zerik, about the topic you're working on and what are the criteria. Go to your theoretical part and look what were you focusing, what did you talk about. If you can write your topic here, I will try to guide you more on the idea of checklist. So please, if you can't say it, just write it down in the chat group. What is your topic, so I can tell you more about it. Yes. Any other students? Rabhi?
Me again, sorry, sir.
Yeah, yes, you're welcome.
Concerning the general introduction,
okay.
Questions and hypotheses, do we have a minimum number?
What do you mean by minimum number?
Of questions. Is it okay to use only 2 questions, or only 1 hypothesis, or only 2? Is it acceptable?
Usually we don't like to see like so many hypotheses. Usually 1 is enough. When it comes to research questions, yeah, maybe the more is better, but usually you are so limited. I mean, you are limited by your work. For example, you can't just give me a dissertation of 60 pages and you ask me like 10 questions. No, try to limit this. Always try to find what are the main important questions that you need to deal with, and you tackle them. Hypotheses, I don't know. I mean, I've seen my doctoral thesis had one hypothesis, and I've seen many dissertations also with 1 hypothesis. You don't need too many unless they are related sometimes. Understood? And usually it's the more questions are precise, the better. This is what we look for.
Okay, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Yes, others. Okay, so please, if those who can't talk or they are shy to talk, they can also use the microphone. We try to keep this conference alive for a while. So I'm going to take this moment and try to talk about the methodology section. You have to know that a master dissertation is all about a methodology. Is it not okay to have any hypothesis? Yes, sometimes we don't need a hypothesis. It's not all the time that we need a hypothesis. Sometimes, for example, because what's a hypothesis? It's something, it's true, but it needs to be verified. For example, say the use of Facebook is going to improve writing. This is a hypothesis unless you prove it. Sometimes we don't have this. For example, I want to observe something. I'm going to observe the phenomena. I don't have any clue what's going there. Just I'm going to investigate. This cannot call for a hypothesis. You will have only research questions. So sometimes you have research questions. Sometimes you can have hypotheses. I'm going to give you a very simple question. For example, I lost my key. I lost my key and I don't know where it is. The research question I'm going to ask is, where's my key? This is the research question here because I have to conduct the research to find my key. Then if you have a hypothesis, you say, I was with my friend. I was with my friend at his house. Maybe I have forgotten the key there. So this is the hypothesis. You know that maybe. So you are not sure. You need to verify it. This is the hypothesis. But sometimes you don't have any. You have just the question. What is that? Or how is going? So that you have only the question. So it's okay. Sometimes you don't have the hypothesis. I think that, I hope this satisfies your question. So what I was saying concerning the methodology, I always say when it comes to a master's dissertation, usually any teacher or most of the time the jury members, what they look for is the general introduction. This is one. They look for the general conclusion and they look for the methodology. Why it is the general introduction and why it's the general conclusion? Because general introduction says everything about what you are going to say. So if I read your general introduction, I'm going to find the problematic there stated. I'm going to find the exact problem you are looking for. And I'm going to find exactly research questions you will answer, the hypothesis, and even in the general introduction, you have to talk about the structure of your dissertation. So in the general introduction, I'm supposed to find everything. Even at the last paragraph, we talk that this dissertation is going to contain, like for example, 2 chapters, practical chapter, etc., etc. So we find that in the general introduction. Then, always remember this, the general conclusion is a reflection. It is a mere reflection of the general introduction. So if you have asked 4 questions in the general introduction, I should find 4 answers in the general conclusion. If you started with a problem, I suppose I'm going to read also concerning that problem at the end. So this is what I will look at. It's the same thing. It's a reflection. That's why in the past, my teacher used to say, always write the general introduction or try to finalize, try to polish the general introduction when you finish. So you have to put them side by side. Your general introduction, your general conclusion, put them side by side and try to match them. So if you have a question here, you should have the answer in the conclusion. Then you go to the methodology section. Methodology section, it's all about details. The more detailed description you can provide concerning every step you have done in the methodology, the better you will try. Because believe me, I always say this, the methodology section is about the question why. It's not when you tell me, for example, I have used, for example, questionnaire. It's not the problem. You can use whatever you want to say. The question that's going to be asked is why. I have used, for example, an interview. Why is that? This is what you're supposed to write in the methodology section. When you write anything, you justify that. For example, and when you justify, please try to provide details. Be accurate. Say everything. For example, this situation, the coronavirus, you have to talk about it. You have written a research in this time. We need to know because it's the background of your research. For example, I have some students working with anxiety. We can use this because I can tell you that most people are really anxious, some worried, some depressed from the situation. They don't know what to do, and this has affected their work. So this is what I need you to just to go to details. And as teachers, usually we really share details. So keep this in mind. And this is concerning literature review. And believe me, most teachers, they will tell you, no, you have talked a lot in literature review. And because we have this habit with students, they really like, they tell us everything in literature review. Sometimes they even things that are not really relevant. But it's good. I mean, at the end, from a master's dissertation, we're supposed to see that you're really mastering the language mastering the methodology. And this is why because I got this question before, is that why for example, the ministry just dropped the practical side. If you drop the practical side of your hypothesis, of your dissertation, it's not called a master dissertation. After all, it's the methodology section that counts for everything. For literature review, you are just reading and rephrasing. You literally are doing nothing. What you are doing now, it's the methodology section that is going to make your work really stands. I hope this is going to help you more. If you have any question, please feel free.
Well, sir, I would like to share an experiment that happened to me last year. It was a real nightmare for me and most students. It was all about the abstract, because you need to mention everything in just one page with the highly professional language. And we were characterized, most students were characterized, much more about the abstract. So would you like to tell us, please, what do we have to mention exactly in the abstract?
Yeah, good. Well, concerning the abstract, what the abstract is really like a very, very, very short summary of all what you have done. And usually everyone is going to read your work in the future, especially if it's an article, is going to read the abstract. And if its abstract is really not good enough, I mean, they are not going to be interested. Usually the abstract, the first sentence is going to start with the problematic, the big problem. If, for example, if I'm working with the didactics, it's going to start with didactics. If it's going to start, for example, if I'm talking about Facebook, I should see Facebook in the first sentence. If I'm thinking about writing, I see writing in the first sentence. This is usually the first sentence. The second sentence, try to narrow down. So if I'm talking about writing, problem of writing, said, okay, most students today, they have a problem with writing, full stop. Then the second sentence is going to take into the second variable. However, it seems that most people are using social media to write more, texting. So we have the second sentence. It's like I introduced something new. Usually the third question, usually directly, the third sentence is going to tell us, because it's going to be so short, the third sentence is going to say, this paper is going to do what? Directly. You don't waste a lot of time, because remember, abstract is usually 250 words. It's usually half a page, so you need to be direct. So this paper is going to investigate Facebook, for example, and texting. This is what I'm going to do. Then after that, directly, usually you kind of give us the main research question. The main research question when it comes to abstract. You go directly. That this paper is going to investigate the using of text, language, and writing. Okay, good. By answering these research questions, usually this is how we say it, by answering these research questions. What are these research questions? 1, 2, 3. Sometimes, because we don't want to state all the research, we say among the questions that are going to be discussed, 1, 2, 3. So it's like you give us only 3 questions or 2 questions. Then after that, you talk about what kind of approach. Directly go to the approach. It's like short summary of your methodology. For this research or for this endeavor, the qualitative and the quantitative mixed method approach, triangulation, is going to be used. Full stop. The methodology comprises of the use of questionnaire, interview. Full stop. Also another sentence. Next, after the sample. For this, the sample consisted of 25 cadre, 25 students, 30 teachers. Full stop. After that, results. The results has shown directly. After it, you need a conclusion. This is the abstract. Abstract is going to tell you everything in a very short, usually a block, one block of paragraph, usually 250 words. You don't. So why? Because someone is in a hurry is going to read and see, okay, he investigated that, used that, and used that certain methodology, and this is the result. Full stop. This is what we do when it comes to abstract. And every one of you, because you're supposed to write an abstract, this is what you should do. There is a good document I've sent to my students on how to write abstract, and I will try to share it with all of you. I will share it in the Facebook group later, and how to write a very, very good abstract. I hope this satisfies your question, Ms. Madhur.
It does, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, there's another element that I would like you to explain it more. It's about the further implications at the end of the dissertation. Most students ignore this part of the research. So why so? Why do they ignore it? I mean, they don't know how it works, or I don't know exactly.
Thank you so much. Concerning, yes, because when you write a research, in this research, sometimes you come with recommendation. It's most of the time you really need to see recommendation for future action, recommendation for future research. We need to see this in your research. What does mean recommendation? For example, since the student talked about the use of, for example, texting and Facebook. Okay, what's the recommendation? I don't know, for example, based on her answer. For example, if we say that, okay, texting language is good, is going to help improve writing. Okay, this is your result. Well, what do you recommend? Maybe we recommend that we really consider this language. Maybe even teachers should shed light on it. Teachers now should be aware, for example, of the problems that, for example, social media and texting. So this is what we need. Sometimes you need even to, sometimes you need to suggest future research based on your own research. For example, sometimes the whole research you do is called what you call just an investigation. You are just exploring a situation. Once you're exploring the situation, for example, I am going to check if this situation, coronavirus, has, for example, made some students perform, how can I say it, word badly, for example, when it comes to their writing their dissertation. Some students are really brilliant students, but they can't write. Simply they are blocked. They lost the will to write. And you are going to investigate this situation. And once you arrive at the results, you have to share with us. I have conducted the research and found, for example, some students, although they are brilliant and they can write, they are not able to write because they are depressed. I have some of my students, they are really depressed. They simply stopped writing. And we need to take this into consideration in the future. Once I want to evaluate their work, how can we evaluate their work? Are we going to say they failed because they didn't write? But they failed simply because we have a situation which is really unusual. It's like war. So this is what we mean by you give recommendation, implication for future research.
Thank you so much, sir, for the clarification.
You are so welcome. Yes, others?
Sir, concerning recommendations, do we recommend another researchers or can we recommend a certain methodology?
Yes. Concerning recommendation, look, recommendation we usually can be at different level. Wait. It can be at different level. For example, every aspect you have in your research can be suggested. For example, let me tell you, I'm going to use a certain methodology. I used questionnaire because now it's the only viable option I have. You can, for example, in your suggestion, you say, because of the situation, I have only used a questionnaire, but it is recommended that future research is going to use another methodology. Sometimes when we finish the whole research, we find that there is a variable that needs to be changed or something in the design that we need to change. You suggest it at the end. In fact, let me tell you a secret. Sometimes the suggestion itself is going to save you For example, I'm going to write something and I think that in the design, it's not really good. It's really, I'm going to be criticized because of that. I'm going to suggest it at the end. So if anyone in the jury is going to criticize you, say, you did not use that. You say, oh, sorry, I know, but I have suggested this because I finished my research and at the end, I realized that this can be changed for better result. This is what we mean by suggestion. In fact, everything can be suggested from the methodology, sample, even your literature review. For example, I am writing a research, then I found at the end that there is a new book. I was writing a research, and when I finish the research, for example, it takes me like, for example, 1 year to write a research. Then when I was about to print it, there is this new book, and this new book is saying a lot of things. At the end, the CJ said, okay, we should follow the methodology mentioned with this author. And unfortunately, this book, for example, was published, for example, in this year. So it's like suggestion is going to help teachers, to help everyone is going in the future, is going to make research. And of course, it's going to save you. I know, for example, I have seen this in real life. I know someone did an experiment and it was about imaging, electronic and certain things. At the end, the experiment failed. It failed totally. It's not failed, but the result was not really satisfactory. So what happened? At the end, he suggested that this methodology should be avoided. He said it like this, that this methodology should be avoided because the result is really not satisfying. This is what you say. This is what we call the ethical section. This is why we make research. So we tell people what happened. Knowledge, even if it's not necessarily is going to succeed or not going to find the result that we really wanted. Have you understood what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. I have another question. I'm sure that you heard this question many times before.
Okay.
So, concerning the pages, in the review of literature, for example, methodology and the review of literature, should we insert the same amount of pages if I have 15? In methodology, should I have 15 in review of literature, or is it okay to have, for example, 15 and 17 and etc.?
Concerning the pages, well, we don't have any rule except that if, for example, if your supervisor has some kind of rules. But there is one thing that you should always bear in mind. It's called the balance. Balance is what? First, balance in when it comes to paragraphs. It's a very good practice if you have balanced paragraph, like paragraph contains 5 lines, 5 lines, 5 lines. Because sometimes I hate it when there is a paragraph of 5 lines and one paragraph of 2 lines and another paragraph of 15 lines. This is really not good. And the other thing is concerning the pages. If you have one section 15, I'm supposed to find another section 15, 14, 16, I mean in the same thing. Not to find one section like 15 and one section 5 pages. Then to find the practical page just to have like 4 pages. No, they should be the same. In fact, the theory and the practice should be equal. Like if you have in theory between all the sections 20, we should find more 20, 25 in the practical side. So it's always there is this kind of balance between the pages.
Since you have mentioned this, sir, concerning, for example, I have to have an example, stages of writing.
Okay.
So, in stages of writing, for example, if I took pre-writing, I used a table. So, should I, in the other stage, use a table, or is it okay to write a paragraph?
No, it's good to change. I mean, it's good to sometimes to have a table, sometimes to have a graphs. I mean, you change. I mean, you don't want your research to be boring, so try always to find different ideas on how to present data. Sometimes table, sometimes graph, sometimes columns. So you just be smart with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I see other students, they are shy, or I don't know, they don't want to talk as usual. And we have Shaddad Others? Yes, anyone else? Any questions? We have, can you repeat the ethical part, please? What do we mention in it? Concerning the ethical part, look, any research should include the theoretical part. So what do you have in theoretical part is simply, I mean, what are you supposed to do, for example, with data? For example, if I have one of my students is working, I think, with children. When you work with children, you have some ethical consideration, for example, not to show their faces. If you take photographs, you have to ensure their safety. You have to ensure that, for example, they are not exposed to certain, I don't know, materials, content that's going to harm them, either physically or mentally. I mean, I need to find all these. For example, even if it is an interview, for example, and I'm going to interview teachers or students, I'm going to take their names, their age. What are you going to do with information later? This is an ethical question. For example, most of you, for example, you post your questionnaire, and your questionnaire, for example, you have to know questionnaires really holds valuable data. For example, teachers are going to say what they like, what they don't like. This information for us, it's nothing, but believe me, for others, it's valuable. For me, it's valuable, because I can use it to write a few other research, to investigate matters further. And you are the owner of this information. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to destroy it, for example? I know, for example, that some interviews you are going to make with people, and they are going to give you sensitive data. Are you going to destroy it? They say, yes, I will destroy it. I will delete this, or I'm going to save it. Or maybe you will say, no, I'm going to share it. I'm going to sell it even. This is what happened these days. Oh no, after this questionnaire, I have a questionnaire that contains like thousands of participants, contains valuable data. I'm going to offer it for money. This is, you tell us, what are you going to do with this? This is what you mean by ethical. There is also sometimes in ethical questions we talk about, because information, how this information are gathered, is gathered. So for example, you need to tell us, for example, we need to make sure that you got information in a legal way. You ask people for permission, because when you send a questionnaire to someone, you are telling them that you have to participate, and themselves they have to click submit. So they know what they are doing. But for example, if you take a recorder and you go and you record them without even knowing, this is not going to be ethical. So I just recorded people and they don't even know. This is not good. Or for example, you tell us, I have information about students, and I tell you, how did you contact the student? Did they give you permission? He said, no, they didn't. So it's unethical. This is what you are going to write in an ethical consideration. Usually, how did you get information? How did you do your research procedure? Was everything ethical? Did you harm anyone? Did you break any law? For example, if you have something and used copyrighted, for example, I'm going to use information from someone else. Do you have permission to do this? If you don't have permission, we'll talk about this. For example, say, I used this from another person. We ask you a question. Did you ask permission? Said, no, I didn't. How come? Because there's a problem. Even a table, for example, if you copy pasted a table from a book and use it, we can ask you, what is the source? If there is no source. Sometimes even with source, if you check some books, for example, you find that they tell you, no, you cannot use this. Even if you are going to say, they say, no, don't. Right? The same thing concerning Facebook, for example, sometimes you share a song and Facebook tells you, no, you can't share it because it's not yours. It's the same thing concerning the ethical section. And he said, hello, sir, can you tell us about how to talk about ethical considerations since we are working online? We will not have any pictures or recording, as you said. Okay. Concerning the ethical consideration when it comes to online, it's much easier, but you have to pay attention. Let me tell you something. If I'm going now and I'm going to work with my Facebook group, it's in front of me, open my PC, then I go to a group. Let's go to our group, for example, of Jalfa University. And I check, for example, the about section. I found this group talks about this. This is public. I don't need any permission to take it. It's public. I find the number of participants, it's public. But I find, for example, the group is private. It's a problem. Means the information here private. For example, I want to go and I find a person and I want to case study, for example, of Facebook groups and Facebook participants. And I find information. I can check their profiles and I find information. First of all, if they have shared this information publicly, means you don't have any problem. But still with this, it's much better if you go and ask them, send a message. Hey, I want to conduct a research and I need to use, for example, your name, your age. Can you allow me this? And you see, for example, you cannot just take their profile picture and use it. That would be unethical. But in a questionnaire, when you send a questionnaire and you tell them by submitting this, you are, okay, done. Because I am going to click submit. So I am going to give consent that I've sent you this information. No one is obliging me. So this is, you can mention it, that online questionnaire, the users or participants were asked, because you were asked to fill this. This is what you are going to write. Then what you are going to write an ethical consideration. What are you going to do with this data at the end? Are you going to destroy this data, delete it, or you just leave it in your Google account and you don't worry about it? This is what we need, because I know most students, they neglect this part, but believe me, if we are as a jury and I find it, I know that this student really, really knows what he's doing or what she's doing. I hope this answers your question, Shiddat. Yes, anyone?
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So I know that master's thesis must have two variables.
Okay.
So is it okay to have three? Because at the end of my work, I found myself answering three questions.
Look.
But I ended up dealing with three variables. So is it okay?
Look, there is no rule telling you that you have 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 7. You can use any number you want. Usually as supervisors, when we find like 3, 4 variables, we say it's too much. Why it's too much? Because we know that the student will be unable to deal with all this, unable to statistically analyze everything. This is why we said sometimes limit, but sometimes it is unavoidable, like to have 3. For example, sometimes you have to work with 3 variables. So there is no issue with that, but always remember, when you are dealing with variables, always remember that it's not only the way you look at it. Sometimes because you have one variable, the second variable, you can correlate what's the relation between this and that. But when I have 2 and I have 1, that will complex it. So we have correlation can be this one with this one, or this one with this. So you have different combination. And of course, if you have 4, that will also complex things further. So this is what you need to really remember. But there is no problem with adding third variable as long as you're really going to correlate between them and you tackle all possible combination of the variables.
All right.
Yeah. Yes. Others?
So about my
Mrs.
I asked you that of population.
I did not get you. I did not.
Are you hearing?
Not that much. I think you still have the problem of connection.
All right.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I have a problem with the battery. I forgot to plug this. Okay, back again. Sorry, the battery was dead. Yes? Yeah. Mr. Rabhi, or who's talking?
Yes, please, sir. I'm
Yes?
sorry. I know I'm asking too many
No,
questions,
no, no,
but
no, 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 no. It's a good thing when you are asking too many questions. I was looking for people asking too many questions, by the way.
okay. So I have a kind of silly question concerning the theoretical part. I'm still on it. So, do we have something called too many references? Because sometimes when I write a paragraph of 4 lines or just 5 lines, I find myself inserting too many references because I'm too afraid of plagiarism. So when I take an idea, I mention the source.
There is
Each time I take an idea, I mention the source.
Listen, by the way, we are praised by sources. So it's like the more sources you have, it's the better, in fact. It's not the otherwise. There is nothing called too many resources. It's always a good practice to have too many resources, especially in the theoretical part. And remember this, it's either a master dissertation or what do you call doctoral thesis. Always having many resources is a very good practice.
Is it okay not to use my own ideas? Because each time I try to use my ideas, I find the source for it. So I'm afraid to use it. And sometimes, okay, for example, the aspects of messaging. So I don't have a source for it, but I know what is the aspects of messaging. I know, for example, too much punctuation or less punctuation. I know it, but I can't find the source for it. Is it okay to use my words?
Look, if you have an idea and you want to put it and there is no source, because there is something, if it's your own idea, I mean, it's okay. Your own idea because it comes from your own interpretation of results, etc., etc. This is something else. It's going to be in the practical. But if it is an information you have, it's like general information, and you have it, and you don't know where have you read it before, because you're sure you have studied it, read it, wherever it is, but you're not sure where. Try to find source. Unless it is common knowledge and everyone knows it, that will not be a problem. But it's always good to always cite, because in literature review, it's called literature review for a reason, because we only use all the data all comes from literature. It's not our information. Did you get it?
Yes, sir, thank you.
You're so welcome. Let me check. There is a question in the private messaging. It's called, do you know any book that specifies the approaches and the methods analyzing data that we could use to understand what's the best of us in your research? Well, alhamdulillah, there is no shortage of books concerning methodology. We have like plenty of them. But most of them, they won't tell you exactly. They will tell you, for example, an interview is a qualitative, but there are many, many books. I will take notes of the things. I said I will share two things. I will share the concerning the booklet of how to write abstract, so I won't forget. And I will share also a book concerning methodology. I have like so many, I have a dozen of them, but I will try to pick one or two really good for you, and I will publish them maybe later this day. Yes, any other questions? Questions? And if you can you can just type it, or so again. So this is what I really hope, because I don't know what's your progress concerning your dissertation. Have you all finished? For example, have you started the methodology section, or you still worried about literature review? I don't know. You have not shared this, but I really want to really advise you on moving on and just really writing. Just try to write. Don't think too much about the question, I am not going to write something good. I was planning to write really something very satisfying to my supervisor, and with this situation I can't actually, and I'm just going to stop. No, don't think about this, because we know as teachers that this is a huge problem, and it's not affecting us only physically. I mean, yes, some, unfortunately, we have friends that have been affected with this, we are physically, but it's also the mental part. Even those that are not affected, we are really, some afraid, some depressed, but I really advise you just to write and start writing. The idea is, even you finish work is much better than doing nothing. So this is, you have to bear this in mind, and we don't have that a lot of time. It's mostly about 1.5 months. And I have a question here. I am confused because I have read that rate scaling is actually quantitative method and not qualitative. A self-assessment technique, which is considered a tool for quantitative approach. Look, I told you that there's always like opinions between this quantitative and qualitative. But let me ask you a question. When it comes to scaling, if I ask a question, for example, I will ask a question to the participants. Now I say, how do you scale this research from 1 to 9? And someone is going to is good, someone is going not good, someone is going average, and they are going. So these are what? These are simply opinions. These are qualitative in nature. Of course, the way you're going to interpret them is going to put them in numbers. Said those who said I am satisfied, there are 10. Okay, this is the number. This is the quantitative part of it. Because you have number, I asked 100 participants, 50 they said I'm happy. And you don't interpret and you stop there. This is quantitative indeed, because you let the numbers speak. But most of the time, even the question, even the opinion itself is not really, it's qualitative in nature. So this is what's going to set it apart. So you have really to be careful on how you talk. Yes, you can say it's quantitative and qualitative, but try to specify more. What's the quantitative side and what is the qualitative side of it? And we have another question. It said, what if I started by piloting first? Do you recommend? Recommend what? What do I recommend? Okay, I don't know what she said. Do you recommend? What is a piloting first? If I get you, your piloting means that before like really sending the real deal questionnaire, you're just going to take a sample, assessing the situation, is going to answer, is not. Pilot research is usually to do first experiments, not an experiments, not the word exactly, but it's like you assess the situation. Is it, can I do it? For example, I want to send questionnaire to Master 2 students. I just try, and I find that, okay, they are not going to answer me, or maybe I'm going to find some problems with them. This is what it means piloting research, but try to specify more on what do you want exactly, so I really understand this. Yes, anyone else wants to talk, participate? Okay, so let me try to recap everything, and at least with the points we have talked about. We talked about first writing the general introduction. I always say leave the general introduction to the end. Although you have I know everyone now has a very good idea concerning the research questions, but the general introduction, you leave it to the end, you polish it with the general conclusion. You put them side by side. This is what you do. You put the general conclusion and the general introduction side by side, so you know what you're doing. It should be a reflection. If you have 4 questions, 4 questions. Concerning literature review, and I think now you should really have finished with that, literature review is only going to talk about what's the main point in your research, that what's the recent literature telling us about this, the topic you're dealing with. Of course, you can split it into 2 sections, depending on your variables and how you do it. This is something you control. Of course, also you need to contact with your supervisor. Then you have the methodology section. Remember also what I told you about the methodology section, that you should always try to go to details. The more detailed your description, the better. Always try to find the answer to the question why. Why have you done that? Yeah, for example, if you have selected, for example, quantitative, qualitative, you also question why. Go to a section, methodological, ethical consideration, data gathering tools, data analysis, and you have implication for future research. And of course, don't forget the limitation.
Sure.
Yeah?
Just a quick question. About when we talk about the approach, should we define it?
It's much better.
Definitions?
Yeah, it's good. I find it a very good practice to, for example, tell us, if you say quantitative and qualitative, it's good to tell us what is quantitative and what's qualitative. It's not necessarily, but it's a good practice.
Okay.
Yeah. There is a question called, what do you mean by transactional approach? Well, I don't have the answer. I think this is the first time I heard of this, and I don't know what it is. I will try to dig in later and find, let me write it so I don't forget it. Okay, approach, try to find it because I did not come across this. Yes, any other questions?
Last question, sir.
Yes.
How many pages? What is the minimum number of pages in writing a dissertation?
Well, this question, let me tell you what I told my students. I told my students maximum 50. 50, I would be happy. 40, I can set it as a minimum. As long as it is so good, it's really well written, believe me, 40, and it can be better than 80 pages filled with something repeated all the time. So there is nothing called maximum. Yes, sometimes we have disagreements, it's 50 pages, but always check with your supervisor. Supervisor has a word in this, but I say don't go over 60, 70 because it's just too much.
I'm asking about the minimum. 15, 20, not 70.
No, I think 50, 45, 50 is going to be good, but ask your supervisor. This is because
you are really scaring me actually now.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? What's the number you are thinking about?
I'm still struggling with 10 pages in the review.
10 pages. You are going to be killed. 10 pages. No.
I know, that's why I'm
but just don't think about it, because the methodology section usually is going to take a lot of pages because you have tables, graphs, etc. So that section usually is going to take more than 20 pages.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yes, others. We have only 9 participants now, so I don't know if you don't have any questions, we can finish this conference. But if you do, please try to share. We have a question here. Okay, wait. What if we found reference that has like the main idea what you want to say, but it's missing another part, which is are going to add as own idea? Do we have to mention that source too? Look, when it comes to literature review, when you put any kind of what do you call, like for example, information which not yours. For example, I have, for example, a definition, for example, of writing style or something, and I want to add it. Even if you think that you can formulate it in your own word, someone is going to ask you, where did you bring this definition from? And here comes the problem. You need the source, so be careful. In fact, literature review should always use a reference. You should always use a reference, because you should always escape the problem of where did you bring this from? And this question you don't want it, especially if you are talking about concepts, definitions, exact numbers. For example, if you tell me that there are like, I don't know how many million users of Facebook around the world, of course you need the source for this. So always be careful. And one of your colleagues said that I use too many resources. Well, I think that's it's a very good thing to use too many resources. That's what we ask for. So you avoid the idea, the problem of plagiarism. Another question from Zirik said, okay, send help? Of course you can. You are so welcome. Just be careful. I'm sometimes so busy. I don't respond a lot, but you are so welcome. Others? Others? So if there is no one is going to speak, and as I said, because this is the first time we tried this online conference, so the idea is to help students if you have any problems, and I'm thinking to have like more conferences in the future, so we'll be always welcome. Ms. Mukhtar, yes?
Yes, sir. In my literature review, I talked about the experience of distance learning with you by the application of Google Meet and this application.
Okay.
So I don't use resources because it's like my own experience. So.
Yeah, this is your own. I mean, you don't need, for example, when you write about this, you are going to, especially in methodology or any section experience. No, this is yours. You have done this. That's why it's better if you write it in the methodology section, anything information that's really, really belongs to you. But if you want just to take screenshots from this, there is no problem because you done this research. You put the screenshot there and you said that this session was recorded on this date. And no one is going to tell you where did you bring from because you said this is mine. I took it. Just because of you, maybe you will need like permission from me. And this is you put it also in the ethical consideration that I asked permission from the teacher concerning this and that. That's it.
So I wrote this in the literature review, so it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. As I told you, this meeting is also recorded. I wanted to make it live on Facebook, but I don't know because I did not ask your permission. I don't know if I do have your permission to put it later on Facebook for others to benefit from it. Please, I need you to answer if you text me, if you can, if you are okay, if this video is going to be later posted on Facebook, please try to answer me if it is yes or no, so I will know if you have any kind of issue with that. I don't think anyone has used the camera here, so I think it's going to be okay. But please try to send me messages now, if it is okay, if later we can post this video, so it's going to be beneficial for others.
Sir, I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
I think we should not limit the number of participants in Zoom. I think we should make it public.
I think
so everyone can attend, because you know today was the number wasn't that high.
So
I think we should open it. What do you think?
It's a good thing. We can discuss it later. So you think that that of tomorrow we can open it to others?
Yes, we can post the code and the meeting ID, and everyone can participate.
Good. I think we should do it as long as we have co-host. I'm really glad Miss Mother is here. You also very helps with everything. So if we can do it, yes, this would be a very good idea. Maybe tomorrow we start. What can I say? Yes, of course, anyone can message me. I don't have any problem. My Facebook is there with my name. Most of you have my email. There is the official Facebook group. I'm always here, of course, but just mind that sometimes I don't respond because of the so many messages I take, but I'll try my best not to ignore anyone. I would like really to thank you so much. And this is first, I have done meetings with my co-students, the one I supervise, but this is the first time I open it, and I hope this is going to be really a good experience for you. Of course, you are still welcome. We will try to tomorrow, inshallah, we schedule another meeting. Maybe it's going to be open, as Mr. Yes said, and you can try to think of more questions, and you are so welcome. So what can I say? All of you have a really lovely evening, and good to see you. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for everything.
You're welcome.